Hi, welcome back to Rewind Stop Fast Forward. I'm Jordan.
I'm Nick.
Noticeably absent today is Jared, but next week he should be back with our next video, which is our sci-fi talk. This week we're going to be talking about the Dark Crystal Age Resistance and It. We're going to go over It Chapter 1 and then we're going to do the It Chapter 2 review after that. So yeah, stay tuned, sit back and relax, and yeah, just enjoy the video.
I feel better soon, Jared.
Alright, so we decided we wanted to start with talking about It. And before we jump into the Chapter 2 review, we want to just give you a brief kind of idea as to what we thought about the first film, just to kind of show you what our sort of expectations were going into the film, that kind of thing. So yeah, what was your kind of overall thoughts on the first It film, It 2017?
I really liked It 2017. I had seen the OG one from like the 80s or 90s with
Tim
Curry as the clown. I thought that this new one, it was really a lot more accurate in terms of like how scary it was, whereas I think like the 80s one was a bit like cringy scary, like just the fact of like the way that they had made him look, like Pennywise look in that movie is genuinely nightmarish, whereas this one they've gone for like a more what I'm assuming is a more realistic idealization of what Stephen King expected when he wrote the book. But yeah, I thought not particularly scary in a sense.
I would say that because like I feel that the films are more accurately kind of a thriller almost, like as much as they are horror, like because they are very tension filled.
I think that
film,
when you consider that the story is about scaring the characters within the universe, it can fall in within that horror genre.
Yeah.
But in doing that, it's more about showing you how Pennywise scares the characters rather than it being, overtly designed to scare you as an audience member. But I actually think that works in its favor because I'm not a fan of jump scares in
they're overused in a lot of horror films.
So I think that it's quite refreshing to see a take on a horror film that's a little bit more directed at showing you how, horror can be used to scare like the characters in world and kind of just be grotesque. And sit in that like eerie valley in your mind as opposed to trying to like, just like get you to jump in your seat in a cinema. I think that
Andy Muschietti does a really great job of visualizing like each of those like scenes with the kids in terms of bringing out those fears and like really building those moments for them.
I think that the story, it has a more long lasting effect than other horror movies, like because in parallel to like Pennywise and that kind of horror classic is a bit of a coming of age story about kids learning to face their fears and learning to, in the process of learning to face their fears, learning to face like kind of societal, expectations of them and of each other, and to challenge what they expect and think of themselves in relation to the world around them. Which that's definitely the strongest part of it. It's not the horror aspect of it. I know people really praised is it Bill Skarsgård? As Pennywise, and he did do a good job, but that's really not the strength of the film in my opinion.
He does definitely like provide a really good villain for the film, but like the strength is truly, and it's what elevates it above most horror films you see, is that it really has a good understanding of its characters and really builds a strong relationship between its characters, which I think is really important. And like it's really what carries you through the film, and like it's what makes it memorable to me, is that like Losers Club, the fact it's almost like Stranger Things, that kind of thing, that kind of group dynamic I think is really great here, and like all the kids do a fantastic job as well.
They do. So the underlying plot points of the first It film, it sets up that Pennywise kind of goes on a rampage and murders every 27 years. So that falls in place in the year 1989 when the characters that we see in the film are children. So It Chapter 1 is about them facing Pennywise as kids and thinking that they have defeated him, not really being aware of what happens following the events of kind of when he goes back into his like slumber for 27 years. So chapter 2 starts off in the future, well, in the present day, but in relation to the first film. 27 years later, Pennywise has come out of his slumber. He started killing again, and it's up to our heroes, I guess, for lack of a better word, to come back to Derry and to try and beat him once again. That's kind of the setup for this film. Yeah.
So real quick before we jump into the review, I just want to quickly, what were, like, before heading into the film, what was kind of your feelings and expectations? Were you kind of a bit worried about? Because I've heard from the original, like the second part of the story, the part where they're adults, is kind of the weaker part of the story. The stronger part aspect was kind of the first film in the story when they're kids, and then the grown-up part of the film is not as interesting, I suppose. That's one thing I'd heard.
It's, I guess I wasn't really worried about that per se, because I did have a lot of faith in
Andy Machete's
the direction. Yeah. But in terms of expectations, it's hard to say what I expected from this film. I kind of expected, strong character work, because that's what obviously the first film is based in its strength. I expected a lot more horror, in the sense that that Pennywise is aware that they're coming back to try and stop him. So I figured that it was going to be a lot more aggressive in the way that he attacked and approached, trying to scare these guys as adults.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the only expectations I had going in, that we were going to see a lot more like kind of classic horror tropes and strong characters. That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. Honestly, that was my only hope, is that they maintained the character work that they'd started in the first film and carried it through. Like, that was the one thing I was like, as long as they do that, I think it's going to be a good film.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So with that, we will jump into our review then. So what do you think overall of the film? And then we'll get into kind of specifics afterwards.
Yeah. I did enjoy it. It's a long movie.
It clocks in at 2 hours and 45 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's nearly 3 hours. Yeah.
It definitely didn't feel that long to me, which is always a good sign. It means that the pacing of the film is fairly solid. It flowed well enough that
For the most part, I would agree.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself, that it did not feel the length that it actually was, which to me is a big tick.
Yeah.
The acting is all very, very on point.
Yeah.
Obviously, the characters that were assigned stronger lead actors get more screen time. That's kind of just the way that it goes.
Yeah.
And it makes the characters that are more interesting more present in the film, which is also a big tick from me, because you don't want to spend your time focusing on characters that maybe you don't care about. And when you're dealing with such a big group of characters, there are obviously some that you can't really invest in as much as others.
Yeah.
And I think that they were aware of that, and they really focused on the ones that were going to provide entertainment to the audience.
But I think that they did a really good job, because obviously when you look at the cast, it's got a really strong mix between known actors and unknown actors. Like, I think there's kind of half the cast, I'd say, are almost, I'm taking a bit of a guess here, but they're kind of more TV actors than they are film actors, or they're more supporting role like kind of actors.
Yeah.
But I think they found a really good balance of having those kind of really well-known actors and the lesser known, but then like they didn't entirely give the well-known actors all the good material and that's it. Like, they found a way of like really balancing those both out. You know what I mean? Yeah.
But like, I mean, James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, and Bill Hader had the strongest material, strongest characters.
Yeah. But then like I was actually surprised by I think his name's James like Ranson. I think he was the one that played the guy with the kind of the asthma puffer.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like, I
he
thought
he got funny actually.
He got some really good stuff, and even like
true.
the guy who played Ben, I thought has some really great moments throughout the film. So like, that's what I mean. Like, they really do balance it out. They don't just like kind of, one-sided about it. You know what I mean?
True. No, that's a good point, I think.
But before, like, I want to go back, because I know like I would kind of felt the same about the pacing, that I thought that like for me, I didn't really feel that kind of runtime so much, but there was definitely points where you could feel it kind of either dragging, and there were some story points that kind of didn't quite pan out. Like, there's one character in particular that I thought didn't quite work as well in the film, which is in the first film, he's like the kind of teenager who has obviously a lot of trouble. He kills his kind of dad, the cop.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he basically is then manipulated by Pennywise to go out and hurt and kill the Losers Club, basically. And he kind of comes back in this film.
Yeah.
And his role just doesn't quite... it's fine. It works for the most part, but it just kind of feels like it's there and it just doesn't kind of go anywhere. And
It's
just
so minor to me
Exactly.
that I
Yeah.
don't really even...
I thought I better bring it up
Yeah.
because it's something that I noticed.
Fair enough, yeah. The other thing that I wanted to say actually in relation to the horror aspect of it, because once again, I wouldn't say that this is like conventional horror.
Yeah.
It's
Again,
not.
like, it feels
it's not
like
really scary.
No,
but I think that it knows that it's not inherently scary.
Yeah.
There's a few scenes that kind of subvert the horror to the point where it becomes humorous.
Yeah.
Not like humorous in that they've tried too hard to be scary and they've
Yeah.
ended up making it funny. Like they've tried intentionally to offset the tension by making the scene funny. And I think that those laughs actually really land well. And they were a really nice way to break up the monotony. And I just was straight up not expecting it.
Yeah, this film really did surprise me in that sense that, like, again, because if you look at it, even IMDb, at it Chapter 2, its genre is just written as horror. Like, that's it. But it actually infuses so many other genres into the film. Like I said, there is horror, there's thriller, there's bits of drama, and there's even bits of like comedy. Like it's lot of different
fairly
elements.
touching film at the end of the day. I think when you really focus on like the relationships between the characters, and because it's been 27 years since you know all of these emotions have been stirred up by Pennywise the first time, it really does build relationships, and it really does, you know, help you to become invested in the characters, I guess, for lack of a better word.
That's actually
you
one
really
thing
do
I
buy
didn't
in.
expect, actually. Was, again, I went in with absolutely no idea what the actual story for this film would be, because I have no idea about the source material. But yeah, I was honestly pleasantly surprised by where the story goes, and it kind of like does things that were unexpected to me.
I think that something that really surprised me was the depth of Bill Hader's acting, because he is by far the funniest character, but I feel like he's also given the most emotionally significant moment in the film, and I was genuinely like affected by it, you know, like, which I was not expecting from this film at all.
Yeah, I think I would echo, because a lot of people have said that Bill Hader is the strongest part about this film, and I would echo that for sure. Like, I mean, everyone does send in really great performances, but him in particular. And as you said, kind of there are things about his performance, like yes, he does the comedy as you expect, but then as they play into that, the fact that you expect that from Bill Hader, but then they take it further with giving him those emotional beats, which he knocks out of the park, and you, again, as you said, you don't expect it. So
No,
when
you don't, definitely.
It does hit you.
One thing that I do have a criticism of, and I don't know if it's like kind of reflective within the story itself, because James McAvoy's character, I don't remember, it's not Stanley,
it's
Bill. He in the future is a writer, and he's notorious for writing novels with really terrible endings. And I don't know if it's a little bit prolific of the overarching opinion about it as a story.
Yeah.
Because I think that the mythology around Pennywise and the whole like way to kill Pennywise was a little bit weird. It didn't really gel for me, and I can't really correlate in my mind how a clown can kind of fit into this. They kind of had this like Native American style ritualized storyline going on, and it just like it was like too different for me to like in my mind for him to mesh well.
I remember I did see like Andy Machete said something about down the road he could potentially look at more films to do with Pennywise, because obviously there's more mythology there for his character, which makes sense, because as you said that part kind of felt a bit more brushed over to me.
Definitely did. That being said,
that end sequence did feel like it was a bit dragging, because it sort of just felt like it was kind of prolonging.
Yeah. The way that they actually did end it, though.
The way the like actual film ended,
No, not the ending, as in the way that they defeated Pennywise. I actually think is fairly significant in like
that actual specific way they do it, but it was just like the kind of way to
yeah,
get to that point.
The story device that kind of led them to that point, not so great, but the way that they actually defeated Pennywise, quite good. Quite solid. Because it kind of was like a full circle moment for all of their characters, which I think is important. Yeah,
for sure.
So
one thing I like, I didn't hate it necessarily, but one other criticism I have is obviously one thing that works so well about the original, like 2017, is that it's set in one location, which is the small town of Derry.
Right.
And like most of this film is set in Derry, obviously.
Yeah.
But obviously to get, like kind of start setting everything up, like where all the characters are, you sort of travel to a bunch of different kind of locations.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to kind of really get into the groove of the film.
I think it is interesting though, because like seeing where they've all gone with their lives, it really does affirm their characters. Like Beverly, for example, who grew up with an abusive father, ended up in an abusive relationship, which I think is significant.
Yeah.
The dude who has the asthma puff, I can't actually remember his name, but he ends up marrying a woman who is like notoriously overbearing in the same way that his mother was.
Yeah.
Bill Hader's character, is a stand-up comedian, which is reflective of... So I think it's just like a way to reaffirm the characters, and it didn't last that long, to be honest.
Yeah.
So...
No, that's what I'm saying.
I'm trying to think about probably 20 to 30 minutes of the film was spent bringing them all back together.
Yeah.
But I think that they knew that they needed to get it going, and so they did try to do it as quickly as possible.
As much as I might criticize that aspect of the film, I still love the fact that it's a film that still focuses on its characters. Like at the end of the day, that's one thing that a lot of films like this don't do, and that it actually still does. It takes the time. It's not just going to be like, let's just make a brisk film where it's, action, and that's kind of it, and like horror, and that's pretty much it. And then end. Like it takes its time to really set up its characters and then give that emotional payoff. Yeah.
Do you want to give your final thoughts, recommendations, or would you recommend seeing it? I
would definitely recommend seeing this because I know a lot of people, when I look online, there's a lot of criticism for it because it's not a scary film.
Yeah.
But it's not intended to be a scary film. It's not intended to be a straight-up horror film in a sense.
Unfortunate that it's obviously marketed as a horror film. So
it has to be, like, if you have to pick a predominant genre, it's best
I would extend that recommendation into saying if you are interested in it as a horror film, as a horror buff, maybe there's not as much here for you as you might expect. That being said, if you're a fan of like character-driven films, story-driven films, and like maybe like more dramatically weighted films, there's something here for you.
And you're definitely going to get a lot of really great sort of thrilling sequences because this is a very tension-filled movie. Like there are definitely so many scenes that have you on the edge of your seat because you're kind of gripped by the moments the characters find themselves in.
So I think that it's a good mesh of genres. Absolutely. To be honest, I'm not a horror fan personally, so I find that this kind of horror film is something that I can really get on board with. Just because it ticks a lot of the boxes that I like to see in films. So, I give it a big tick of approval. Highly recommend. Definitely worth seeing. Yeah.
I'm on the same page. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, you should go and watch this film.
Cool. Well, that was our review of It Chapter 2. Stay tuned because we're going to talk a little bit more about the new Netflix show, Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance next.